Do you want to know something crazy? Metroid Prime 4 was first announced in the summer of 2017 when I was going into 8th grade. By the time you're seeing this, I've just finished up all my final exams and have now graduated college. You heard that right, the first time I saw the Metroid Prime 4 logo, I was going into 8th grade, but I didn't get to actually play it until the week of my final classes ever in college. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an eternity, but we're finally here. We finally have Metroid Prime 4. Lucky for me, I didn't have as long of a wait as a lot of other people did. When Metroid Prime 4 was first announced, I wasn't really a Metroid fan yet, but I still got really excited because I knew the significance of that game being announced. Just as someone who's really interested in gaming and stuff, I just was really excited to see that game finally announced. I knew how much it meant for other people. My only exposure to Metroid at that point was through the Nintendo Land attraction. And funny enough, that's kind of how I got into Metroid, was because of Nintendo Land. Anyway, I became a Metroid fan a few years after Prime 4 was announced, and I've been anxiously awaiting ever since. It's been over 8 years, and I finally have the game in my hands. I'm playing it, I'm experiencing it, so has it been worth the wait so far is the big question. You might have saw there's a bit of controversy surrounding this game, with the characters that are introduced and the ratings not living up to the sky-high expectations for a Metroid game. What do I think of all that? What do I think of the game so far? I have my thoughts and opinions on all of that. Just a quick disclaimer, this is going to be a relatively spoiler-free discussion. I'm only going to be talking about the first 2 hours of playtime, only up to the first areas of the game, so the green area you see in the trailers, I believe it's called Fury Green. I'm only going to be talking about everything up to that point, as well as anything that we already saw in the trailers and the previews and stuff. Anyway, let's talk about Metroid Prime 4. So I don't typically like starting out with the graphics or the visuals of a game because, gameplay first and all that stuff, but considering this is a first impressions video and these are just my initial thoughts, what stuck out to me most, holy shit, this game looks amazing. It's very rare that games take my breath away in terms of graphics and visuals in this day and age. I think the last game to actually just blow me away was probably The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima back in 2020. But since then, we've only really seen incremental upgrades in terms of visuals and games. So it's pretty crazy that 5 years later, I'm finally just getting my breath taken away by the visuals of a game, and it's a Nintendo game. That's crazy. I do play on the Switch 2 edition of the game, so obviously that's going to look a lot better than the Switch 1 version. I play on 4K 60 frames per second, and it just looks phenomenal. There were so many different times in the game where I had to just sit there and take it all in. It's absolutely gorgeous from an art style, art direction perspective. The environments are just so interesting. I love how the first area is just that perfect blend of beautiful but also extremely dangerous. And it's also just incredibly impressive from a technical standpoint. The frame rate is rock solid, the resolution is beautiful, everything is just super detailed. It's just crazy how impressed I am by these visuals, by these graphics, and it's a Nintendo game. That's just so awesome. Also, Samus just looks fantastic in all the cutscenes. The shine on her suit, it's just, it's so good. Next, we have to talk about Samus's psychic abilities. Yes, the thing you can use to finally open doors. I was really intrigued by this mechanic when I first saw it. We had been waiting quite a while when we were watching the trailers for this game to see what the hook or what the gimmick of Metroid Prime 4 was going to be. And then it was eventually revealed to be Samus's psychic abilities. And they just didn't look like they were going to be super interesting on the surface. I'm just looking at all the stuff they're showing you can do in the trailers, open doors and stuff, and I'm just is this really the hook we've been waiting for all this time? Is it really going to be that interesting? But here's the thing, Nintendo has this funny way of showing off mechanics and trailers for games and stuff, and it just doesn't look that exciting on the surface, but then when you finally have the game in your hand and you're finally playing it, it all starts to make sense and you start to see why it's so cool. And they just have so many different ideas in terms of how to use this new mechanic. They use it in so many interesting ways. And also, I just trust Retro Studios with my life, so I knew they probably had something cool cooking up. So in my experience, the psychic abilities haven't been mind-blowing or anything, but they have been a lot more fun than I thought they would be based on the trailers. Again, I'm only about 2 hours into the game, so they're being used in pretty simple ways so far, but I could definitely see how they become a lot more interesting later on. I can see the vision, I see the potential. One of the highlights for sure is the controlled charge beam ability thing, where you shoot your charge beam and you have the ability to control it. And this is something where I get really excited every opportunity I have to use this thing. I've had to use it in both combat scenarios as well as just puzzle exploration. isolation stuff. Like maybe there's a door you can't access for one side, so you have to shoot it through a hole in a wall and then like angle it back and hit the door from the other side. It's like really simple, but it's like really fun. It's just really fun and satisfying to use. It's really reminiscent of the beetle in Skyward Sword. So far, it's just been really fun and really satisfying to use, and I'm really excited to see it be used in more advanced ways later in the game. Overall, I'm really enjoying using the psychic abilities, even when they're used in just super simple, basic ways, like deploy a morph ball bomb and then just like snatch it and then shoot it into a socket. Basically, even when it's simple, it's fun, so that just gets me really excited for how it's going to be like when it's used in more advanced ways. Next, I wanted to talk about the combat, and it feels pretty much like Metroid. If you've played the games before, you're already going to be pretty familiar with how it works. And if you've played the Prime Remaster, you're already pretty familiar with the twin stick or dual stick control system. Something new they did add to the combat is the free aim. So basically, you can move the reticle around while you're locked onto a target already. So this would be good for like if you're locked onto a larger enemy like a boss or something, and you specifically need to target a weak point, so you lock onto it and then you use the right stick to position it so it's directly aimed at its weak point. It makes combat way more fun, so you're not just like locking directly onto its weak point and then just spamming the A button or whatever. It adds a little bit more depth to the combat. Not really much else to say on it. Maybe the psychic abilities will add like even more changes to the combat, like the controlling the charge beam thing, like that's shown up in a few combat scenarios, but other than that, it all just feels pretty familiar, which is great because I love the combat. Considering the last Prime game we got was in 2007, I don't really think it's a series that desperately needs its combat changed up a lot. It's not like people are getting really tired of the combat and it's gotten like really stale, because I mean the last time we got a new game was almost 20 years ago, so it doesn't really need to be refreshed that much in my opinion. If you ask any Metroid fan about the most important part of the series, about 95% of them will say that it's the atmosphere. Watch literally any Metroid video essay discussion on YouTube. They will almost certainly mention the atmosphere at least 20 times. And for good reason, because it's really important in a Metroid game. It doesn't even matter if it's the Prime games, it doesn't matter if it's the 2D games, you have to get the atmosphere right in a Metroid game. That feeling of isolation, the moodiness, the tension, the feeling of danger around every corner. The isolation aspect is the biggest one for me personally. Just that feeling of being completely alone on a mysterious planet. There's dangers around every corner. If you get jumped by a big scary sci-fi monster, no one is going to be there to save you. No one will hear you scream. Like if you get jumped and you die, you're pretty much screwed. I love that feeling so much. And here's where we talk about the biggest controversy of Metroid Prime 4. So I don't know if you saw the previews, but it basically revealed that there's this character named Miles McKenzie, and he basically threatened to completely eviscerate any feelings of tension and isolation and danger in Metroid Prime 4. He's basically an extremely talkative character that attempts to be the comic relief and basically destroys any tension with his constant quipping. As you can imagine, those two things do not mix at all in a game series like this. The thing is, I can typically enjoy this type of corny character as long as they're done right. The problem is that it is actually impossible to do this type of character right in a Metroid game, because this type of character belongs nowhere near a Metroid game. It is oil and water. These two elements just don't work together at all. They cannot coexist. When I was playing the game, any bit of tension was immediately snapped as soon as he opened his mouth. Any feeling of isolation is obviously completely gone because he just follows you around everywhere in the earlier stages of the game. And any feeling of danger is relieved when you have a dude following you around cracking jokes the entire time.
Is everything in this jungle trying to kill us?
I really just don't understand how Retro Studios thought this was a good idea. They are so good at what they do, and they are so smart. They understand game design so well, they understand how to build atmosphere so well, and they're really the only studio I trust with the Prime series other than Nintendo's internal development studio. This is the type of stunt that I thought a different studio that didn't understand Metroid would try to pull. Like, it's the type of thing you'd think that someone like Bandai Namco would try to pull, and then Nintendo would see it and be like, yeah, okay, you can't have Metroid anymore, we're canceling the project, and then they would just give it back to Retro Studios. I never would have thought Retro Studios would try and do this. It just seems so Like, they understand. They have to understand what makes Metroid so special. They have to understand one of the biggest selling points of this game. Did they not see all the praises people sung about the original games and how well the atmosphere was done? Did they just completely ignore that? Is there just a bunch of new people in the studio? Or even if they did have new people, I don't understand how they can't just see the original trilogy and understand why so many people love those games so much. Like, I just don't understand why they thought it was a good idea. I did obviously get extremely nervous when I saw the previews of the game and I saw Miles McKenzie and his infinite jokes. But I was pretty optimistic at the same time. I did still trust Retro Studios. They had to have understood that this type of character at least can't stick around for the entirety of the game. So I was optimistic that he would just be in the tutorial section of the game and maybe just appear here and there throughout the game, but ultimately not interfere too much with the game's atmosphere and tone. And I'm very happy to say that, at least so far, I was right. He's basically just there with you for the early stages of the game, the tutorial section of the game, and after a while he goes off and does his own thing, and then you're back to absorbing all that atmosphere that Metroid is known for. Unfortunately though, I did get to a point in the game where he finds the ability to basically communicate with you through your headset from afar. So basically at any point while you're getting fully immersed in the atmosphere, he can basically just bring it all crashing down by talking to you through the headset. So far, it hasn't been too bad, I will say. It's pretty occasional that he interrupts your experience by yapping your ear off, so it is unfortunate that it is a thing at all, but it's not too bad. And I also just wanted to say that I know it sounds pretty dramatic, what I'm complaining about right now. You know, how could it really affect everything that much? Mackenzie does not by any means ruin the entire game for me, like not even close, but he does unfortunately ruin the specific sections that he's in. And I know ruin sounds like a really strong word, but unfortunately, that is the correct word. Like, you just cannot have an isolated, tense, dangerous atmosphere while having a corny character by your side cracking jokes. Like, it just doesn't work at all. It does completely ruin the atmosphere when he's on screen. But when he's not on screen, which he doesn't stick around with you for that long, it's just the traditional Metroid atmosphere. So let's talk about the atmosphere when Miles Mackenzie has finally fucked off. It is literally everything that you want in a Metroid game. It's everything you've come to expect. Like I mentioned, the first area is just so beautiful. It's so breathtaking to exist in, but at the same time, it feels so dangerous. You have all these plants and monsters around every corner trying to kill you. That initial feeling of isolation is still there. And that's just the first area. And the areas I've progressed to after getting out of the Fury Green area, it just becomes even more moody, even more intense, even more atmospheric. And then there's the music. Oh my god, they absolutely nailed the music. It is so good. They just absolutely knocked it out of the park. The song that plays in the Fury Green area, it's just, oh, you know that meme with SpongeBob and he's got like his earbuds in and he's just floating? Like, that was me. That was me in the first area of the game. The music is so good. It almost brings a tear to my eye. It's just so beautiful. It sucks me into the world so much. And honestly, based on what I'm hearing so far, this could end up being my favorite soundtrack in the Metroid series. As long as this quality keeps up through the entire game, it might end up being my favorite. It's just incredible. And then another really important aspect of Metroid to mention is the exploration. But unfortunately, there's not too much to say so far because I'm still pretty early on in the game. I basically just got out of the tutorial sequence, so I haven't had a lot of opportunity to just poke around at things, try and find cool upgrades, all that sort of stuff. Now, it might just be because I just got out of the tutorial section of the game, but it does feel a bit more linear than past Metroid Prime games, especially the first one. I just got done replaying that game, so like compared to the first game, it does feel a bit more linear. I have a specific section of the game in my head where it's literally just a straight line, and I'm probably just reading like way too much into the tutorial section. But either way, it doesn't really matter to me whether the entire game ends up being more linear than past games or if it starts to branch out a lot more later in the game. It doesn't really change how I feel about the game. I'm kind of indifferent towards it. All things considered, this game has been absolutely fantastic so far. You may be expecting me to give my thoughts on like the review scores of the game because, you know, past Metroid games have been like in the 90s on Metacritic, and this one I think is like low 80s last I checked, which is still really good, but people were like, oh, it's not quite up to snuff with the other Metroid games. I don't really have much to say on that so far because I'm not that far into the game, so I don't really know if it ends up being a 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10, a 6 out of 10, but I mean, so far it has absolutely lived up to my expectations, even considering the annoying side characters. It just feels so surreal that we are finally here and I am playing Metroid Prime 4. Like, I didn't even have my Switch yet when this game was first announced, because, you know, the Switch came out March 2017, Metroid Prime 4 was announced June 2017, but I didn't end up getting my Nintendo Switch until like November 2017, so it's just crazy. I was still playing on my Wii U when this game was announced, but now I am playing this game and experiencing it with my own two hands, and my 2 eyeballs, and it doesn't even feel real. The first Metroid Prime is one of my favorite games of all time. I didn't get around to playing it until around 2020 or 2021, so I was pretty late to the party, but as soon as I played it, like, it immediately became one of my favorite games ever. I remember playing it on my little CRT TV in my bedroom and on my GameCube. I remember my junior year of high school, I would rush home after musical rehearsal and I would just be playing Metroid Prime on a snowy winter night. And then sometimes school would close and then I would just play Metroid Prime the entire day with a cup of hot chocolate, and it was so nice. I have so much nostalgia for the first game, even though I didn't even play it like anywhere close to when it first came out. This series has always been one that I associate with the winter, since that's when I first played Metroid Prime, so I'm really glad Metroid Prime 4 came out when it did. It is pretty frustrating that I don't have as much time as I'd like to play this game. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm wrapping up my final semester at college, so as you can imagine, I'm swamped with final projects and homework assignments and exams coming up and all that stuff, so I just haven't had as much time as I'd like to get fully absorbed and immersed in this game yet. And then there's just the aspect of me preparing to go out in the real world, so I don't have quite the time I would like to really play this game. But luckily things are starting to slow down a bit, so I'm starting to get more and more time, and it's been great so far. I'm really just trying to soak it all in because I know I'm going to have some really special feelings towards this game later in my life. You know, considering it came out at such a pivotal time in my life, you know, such a big period of transition. So I know I'm always going to associate this game with this time in my life. I know it's going to be just a huge, like, nostalgic game for me later. Life is suddenly moving a lot faster these days, but video games remain a constant in my life in this whirlwind of change going on, so I definitely appreciate Metroid Prime 4 for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Metroid Prime 4 is real and it is out now, and you can experience it with your own 2 hands and eyeballs, so get out there and play a Metroid game. You will not regret it. And that's all I have to say, so farewell.